So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Susan Nelson, and my talk today is titled Survival of the Kindest. It's a provocative title that I took from a chapter of the book that I've been reading called Born to Be Good. That's the title of it. Born to Be Good, and that's written by Dr. Keltner. He's an American professor of evolutionary psychology at UC Berkeley, and he's the co-director of the Greater Good Science Center in Berkeley, California. So this is going to be essentially a bit of a book report. But I found the material fascinating, and I hope that you'll find something in it for yourselves. There's also an interview with him you can find on YouTube with he and Michael Pollan in conversation. And there's also a talk by him on YouTube that you can find if you're interested. So he's, his books and writings, in his books and writings, he asks the following questions. What are the deep origins of our capacity as humans for kindness? Where does our capacity for goodness come from? How can we be happy or have a meaningful life? And could kindness be an evolutionary advantage? So in Buddhism, as in most religious traditions, compassion and kindness are core values. And we teach metta here, and on Saturdays we chant the Metta Sutra every week. And so it's something we promote. And metta comes from the word mitra, meaning friend. And so one of my favorite teachers of the Four Immeasurables, Christina Feldman, calls metta, or loving kindness, as we normally refer to it, boundless friendliness, which is really nice, especially if you feel like you can't love everybody. You can at least, try for being friendly, more friendly. That's something we can handle. So he comes to the same conclusions about happiness and the emotions of compassion, gratitude, and awe. Being critical to a fulfilled life as the Dalai Lama, Matthew Ricard, Thich Nhat Hanh, and many other teachers. And he's not a teacher, he is a professor of evolutionary psychology at Berkeley, but he's not a Buddhist teacher. He's not a spiritual teacher. He's coming from the point of view of research. And so this book was just packed with technical stuff that I will not burn you with. But there are many studies that are sort of obliquely referred to here, but many rigorous studies that have been done about these ideas. So today in the US, our children rank 20th of 21 in industrialized countries in terms of social well-being. The moral and ethical status of the US has fallen dramatically. Trust in other people and institutions is at an all-time low. And deep concerns about our democracy, war, inequality, and climate change raise doubts in people's minds about whether we have a hopeful future we can look forward to. So there's this hunger for other views of the human race's potential for good. So some of the things he covers in this book are that we're a caretaking species. The profound vulnerability of our offspring, our babies, has rearranged our social systems, made us into caregivers, caretakers of the young. We're a face-to-face species. We're remarkable in our capacity to mirror and mimic and to empathize. Our power hierarchies are different than other species. Contrary to what the show Succession is about, our power hierarchies are actually, power goes to the most emotionally intelligent. We reconcile our conflicts, for the most part, without fleeing or killing. We've developed powerful capacities for forgiveness. Although we're accustomed to thinking that survival of the fittest is the law of evolution, Keltner posits that a better description of the human adventure would be survival of the kindness, since we're a caretaking species. He goes to Darwin himself and to Confucius for corroboration of these ideas. The science of different emotions is rooted in Darwin's deepest insight about human emotion, that the visible expression of emotion that we see today are clues to the ancient behaviors that led some mammals to fare well in the tasks of survival, reproduction, and care of offspring. And Keltner says this science wouldn't exist without the methodology of his mentor, Paul Ekman, and Walter Friesen, that they gave to the field, the ability to measure millisecond movements of the muscles in the face. That's really the most unique thing about his research that hasn't been done before. Because, you know, a lot of research has been done about his other claims that we thrive when we cultivate compassion and kindness. So the chapters of his book cover different emotions with insights from art, literature, philosophy, and science. And some of this, I'll give some examples. Embarrassment, for example, acts as an appeasement display. An appeasement display, prompting others to forgive and forget behaviors that we're embarrassed about. The smile is revealed to have evolved as a signal of equality and trust, and as a sign of a life well lived. I think of Thich Nhat Hanh's instruction in meditation, you know, to have a little half smile. Smile to yourself, to the practice, to all beings. Laughter evolved as a unique signal of play and levity, and it promotes a healthy response to trauma. Touch, there's a new science devoted just to touch. It helps people trust, increases body weight in preemies, and decreases depression for those living in nursing homes. At the Greater Good Science Lab, they've documented that people can communicate compassion, love, and gratitude with 1-second touches to the forearms of another. With that intention in mind as they do that 1-second touch. Compassion, Darwin thought it was the foundation of our moral sense and of cooperative communities. The vagus nerve is centrally involved in compassion. And the ways we can stimulate the vagus nerve, one of them is bowing. Bowing down the way we do in our services stimulates the vagus nerve. And it's also related to serotonin. Awe. John Muir's experience of awe in the Sierras led to the current environmental movement. And him, along with other Westerners, have transformed awe from a religious experience to something that can be felt in nature, something that can be felt in relation to a person who does awesome things, art, and in spiritual experience. So he has a whole book called Awe. That's his other book. I don't think it's a real big book, but I have it, and I'm going to read that one next. He introduces in this book the Confucian concept of Zen. So, and he calls this science of positive emotion in the book, he calls it Zen science. So I'm going to use that word, and you can calculate your Zen ratios in your life based on the presence of positive pro-social emotions. So Zen that is defined as a complex mixture of kindness, humanity, and respect that transpires between people. Confucius was apparently alienated by the violence, materialism, and hierarchical religion of 6th and 5th century China. Wow, not a lot has changed. He taught a new way of finding this meaningful life through the cultivation of Zen. So a person of Zen, he said, wishes to establish his own character and the character of others. A person of Zen brings the good things of others to completion and does not bring the bad things of others to completion. Zen science, as Dr. Keltner says, reveals a new way of thinking about the evolution of human goodness, which requires the revision of our assumptions that we're solely wired to maximize desire, to compete, and to be vigilant of what's bad. For the individual person, new studies are finding that a high Zen ratio, a devotion to bringing the good in others to completion, is the path to a meaningful life, which echoes the Bodhisattva vow. And of course, we've heard a lot about this from the Dalai Lama. We're devoted to bringing out the liberation from suffering in ourselves and others as bodhisattvas. At Greater Good, they found that engaging in 5 acts of kindness a week, does that seem like a lot? No, it's easy, right? They don't have to be big displays, you know. Anyway, that elevates personal well-being in lasting ways. Also, the research that Richie Davidson has done in Wisconsin about loving kindness meditation, that just 5 or 10 minutes a day can transform completely how we see the world and what our experience is. And I've certainly found that to be true because I practice loving kindness meditation along with Zazen. So the new neuroscience suggests we're wired for Zen. So we are wired to compete and to be self-involved, but we're also wired for Zen, for acting cooperatively, for experience positive emotions, gratitude, kindness, compassion, awe, and embarrassment. Who knew? So when we give to others, we activate these brain centers, these reward centers, they get humming. And giving, they found, may enhance well-being. Well, actually may enhance self-interest more than receiving. So it's a different kind of self-interest. High Zen ratios in marriage leads to happier couples. They generously give credit to their partners, and they see hidden virtues along with those foibles and faults. They ascribe them to them. High Zen ratios are proving to be a hallmark of healthy societies with increased trust amongst a citizenry discrimination and economic inequality fall. Yeah, and these high gen ratios that come from these positive emotions promote a society's economic and ethical progress. And I think, wasn't it Bhutan that has made happiness a core value in their society? Right. Yeah, I read about that. And so in the US, as I said, the trust in people and institutions has fallen 15 percentage points in the last 20 years. US adults now have 1/3 fewer close friends in their circle of intimates than they did 20 years ago. And of course, the pandemic didn't help much with that. When we started getting accustomed to being alone a lot and not being in person with our friends. But in studies of trust levels in people from other countries, the Scandinavian countries, that's a no-brainer, right? And the East Asian countries, both rich and poor, have higher levels of satisfaction, life satisfaction. So these claims that humans are wired to pursue self-interest and to compete and to be vigilant to the bad are no doubt familiar to you. You've heard this before. They lie at the heart of our Western civilization, Western thinkers. And they guide the thinking of figures in the fields of psychoanalysis, economics, politics, and evolutionary theory. For example, Freud. The very emphasis of the commandment, thou shalt not kill, makes it certain that we're descended from an endlessly long chain of murderers, whose love of murder was in their blood, as it is perhaps in ours. That's Sigmund Freud, the founder of our psychoanalysis. And here's Machiavelli of mankind. Yeah, right. What do you expect, right? Of mankind, we may generally say they are fickle, hypocritical, and greedy of gain. So these deeply ingrained assumptions have made it harder for us to pursue happiness or a meaningful life. Those tendencies they're talking about make evolutionary sense. They're built into our genes and our nervous systems. They're a part of human nature, but that's just half of the story. That's the good news. Studies around the world in 12 different cultures showed a preference in people for equality with others. People will sacrifice the enhancement of self-interest in the service of other principles, such as equality, or even just advancement of the welfare of others, or sometimes for a more favorable reputation. You may be lucky enough to know one or two people in your life that embody these qualities, these positive emotions. Through mirroring, we can aspire to be more like that when we have living examples. My living example over 35 years ago was Kadagiri and Tomoe. Kadagiri Roshi and his wife Tomoe. They were such good examples of compassion, warm-heartedness, generosity, giving. Just wonderful. I feel so blessed to have been able to spend about 10 years around them. So Keltner doesn't like this focus on the word happiness. We focus on that and it cuts us off from a more scientific understanding of the other pro-social positive emotions. By asking, am I happy? We miss out on the nuances of life. Darwin said groups and individuals fare better when we cultivate compassion. I think the word he actually used was sympathy, but it's been changed. I think cultivate compassion was probably not terms that he used. Our everyday conversations sometimes are filled with sensual descriptions of what we think happiness is. You know, a really great wine, a comfortable hotel bed, you know, those kinds of things, sort of creature comforts. Yeah, but the poet Shelley had this to say about the great secret to morals and ethics. Morality and ethics are the identification of ourselves with the beautiful that exists in thought, action, or person not our own. Darwin's book, which he wrote years after Origin of the Species, was titled Expression of the Emotions in Man and Animals, and it was a bestseller at the time. It sold 9,000 copies in the first printing, and it sparked all kinds of discussions in cafes and parlors. His wife, Emma, was no doubt quietly pleased, as a book on emotional expression would no doubt unsettle the people of the Victorian age less than the Origin of the Species did. In the aftermath of that book, he responded to a lot of attacks on his theory of evolution. Most of them centered on whether natural selection could account for the design of humans. Creationists were fine with evolutionary accounts of rocks, reefs, mollusks, barnacles, and finches, but their empirical open-mindedness had limits. They recoiled at the possibility that humans themselves were products of evolution, descended from apes, shaped by natural selection, not touched by the hand of God. And emotions have long been a battleground for competing views of human nature. And that once again proved to be the case in the clash between creationists and evolutionists. Sir Charles Bell, a creationist, argued that God had graced humans with special facial muscles that allowed them to express uniquely human emotions. Lofty, higher sentiments like sympathy, rapture, or shame, emotions unknown to lower species. But you know what I love about the internet? There's not a lot I love about the internet, but the one thing that I really love is all posts that show animals smiling, dogs smiling, and animals protecting and even mothering other animals from different species. I just love that. It gives me a lot of there's a lot of serotonin that I think is flowing through me when I watch those. It's one of the best things, you know, about social media. There's nothing social about it. These facial muscles were part of a rationale for humans to be at the top of the great chain of being master of other species. Darwin took on this challenge with astounding powers of observation. He marshaled an eclectic variety of data to document mental continuities between humans and animal expression. The different kinds of data led Darwin to a rich portrayal, the most detail ever achieved, of human emotional expression. Now, I never knew that about Darwin, did you? I had no idea. Somewhere in here, I think, is the name of the book that he wrote 12 years after Origin of the Species that talks about this. So he created complex charts of human expression with a lot of detail as to the way they're conveyed through the face. As he parsed the realm of expressive behavior, tracing it back to our primate predecessors, He realized what he lacked, a study that would address whether facial expressions are universal to a human species shaped by a common history of selection pressures. He talked to English missionaries around the world about whether they saw any different expressions in the faces of people in these different countries than those of Victorian England. They did not. The definitive data would come 100 years later in the work of Paul Ekman. For William James, for Darwin, our emotions are wired into our 43 facial muscles. For William James, the topography of our emotions is contained in our viscera. In other words, very subjective states are registered in bodily responses. I think we fully accept that now, don't we? What James said is if we took out, he was apparently somewhat of a hypochondriac. If we took out the clutching gut, rapid heartbeat, sweating, and other physiological reactions like trembling, muscle tensions, etc., what would be left? James argued that you would be left with a purely intellectual state. So anybody who practices meditation or yoga or receives massage or other healing modalities can probably relate to this, that we do store trauma and we store emotional reactions in our tissues and our muscles, and those can be released through these different practices. But philosophers have long argued that emotions should be cut off from social life. This train of thought found its expression in the 3rd century BC with the Epicureans and the Stoics. It extends to St. Paul, St. Augustine, in more contemporary times to B.F. Skinner and, how do you pronounce her name? Ayn Rand?
Ayn Rand.
Ayn, yeah. In the words of B.F. Skinner, we all know that emotions are useless and bad for peace of mind. I don't know about you, but I was taught in school about the work of B.F. Skinner. And also, I really had a hard time in college in Western philosophy courses because of this sort of feeling of being cut off from emotion. I always had big emotions growing up, really big emotions. I don't think my parents were really thrilled by that, but it was something that was part of my personality, something that I've had to learn over time how to work with. And thankfully, there's so many ways to work with emotion in our Buddhist tradition. So consider some of the metaphors we've used for emotion. We conceive of them as opponents instead of allies. We wrestle with, are driven mad by love, anger, guilt, shame. Imagine referring to love, gratitude, anger, and other emotions as friends, a source of health or insight. And I think always about what Thich Nhat Hanh said about holding our anger in our 2 warm hands, treating our anger, befriending it and treating it as an ally. What can we learn from it? What kind of clarity is it bringing us to? And although it's listed as one of the 3 poisons, it can also be an ally to waking up, a useful catalyst for change, even as we're aware of its destructive potential. Emotions are powerful moral guides. They are upheavals that propel us to protect the foundations of ethical communities, concerns over fairness, obligations, virtue, kindness, and reciprocity. Our concern over right and wrong and capacity for virtue are wired into our bodies. And further, in our day-to-day lives, It's lightning quick how this all happens. It's lightning quick. Part of what's so useful and helpful about meditation practice is conditioning ourselves to have a little space between reaction and action. So this new science of emotion, typified by Paul Ekman's work on facial expression, apparently they gave him money to go to New Guinea and do some field work there after they found out that this is the federal government, that there were some nefarious uses of those funds going on in a third world country. They cut the funds off to that and gave the funds to Paul Ekman, luckily for all of us. So his work on facial expression and emotion began to uncover how emotions are wired into our facial anatomy, our vocalizations. That's something so human that we possess, is the ability to make a very wide a range of vocalizations. That's something that other animals obviously don't possess. Our autonomic responses and our brains. They learn that emotions support commitments that make up our social contract with friends, romantic partners, siblings, and our kids. Emotions are guides to ethical action, and they tell us what matters. When I first started practicing, there was never anything said about emotions. So that's why I'm here talking about it. Because, you know, it wasn't talked about in Zen. It wasn't something that anybody thought might have some value to us. Emotions like gratitude, compassion, embarrassment, and awe, they are the substance of a meaningful life. Our hominid ancestors thrived as individuals and groups due to these human emotions and the power of cooperation in social groups. And this ability has been passed down in our genes expression. Oh, it looks like, lucky for you, it looks like some of this talk didn't make it. So what are some of the ways that we can cultivate these and harness the power of these positive emotions? Well, he gave the one example, 5 acts of kindness. Another thing that he talks about that I think is brilliant is that even if we don't have time for 30 minutes of meditation every morning and study, that we can do simple things like, for loving kindness, we can just think of 2 different people every day, visualize them, and send them ease, send them safety, send them kindness. That's something that we can all do easily. Whether we're Buddhist or not Buddhist, we can easily do that. Another thing he talks about, which we know because we've been focusing on our breathing for a long time, is deep breathing. And he suggests this kind of breathing where you sort of expand your chest when you breathe in, and when you breathe out, you kind of pull in your belly. So it's kind of the opposite of what we normally do. But I found it interesting because in my Qigong study, it's one of the ways of breathing that's taught, is this taking in, you know, expanding and bringing in the breath, and then taking it in to the hara, or the center. So let's end today with a little guided very short guided meditation on kindness. And I also want to point you to the website, the Greater Good Science Center. I went on the website, and there are on there many resources, articles, there's videos, and there's practices that children can do, adults can do to cultivate these positive emotions. So let's get into a comfortable position, as comfortable as you can while still being upright. And visualize yourself sitting here in your mind's eye. See yourself in the room with all the others and begin to first offer loving kindness to yourself. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I have ease of body, mind, and spirit. And just do that silently a few more times. And if my words don't fit, you can put your own words in. And after doing that, let's move on to a friend, someone that you're at ease with, that you get along easily with and enjoy each other's company. And visualize this person. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you have ease of body, mind, and spirit. I'm going to repeat that a couple more times, sending it to this friend. And next, visualize a neutral person, someone that you might see, that you might run into in your everyday life. Maybe it's the clerk at the store you frequent. Maybe it's a bus driver, someone like that. Someone that you don't really notice too much or think about too much, usually. And offer this to them. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you have ease of body, mind, and spirit. And next, let's send loving kindness to everyone here in this room with us today. Seeing all of us together in our mind's eye. May you all be safe. May you all be happy. May you have ease of body, mind, and spirit. And now imagine, as it says in the Metta Sutra, everyone in the whole world together, all beings, humanity herself. May everyone be safe. May everyone be happy. May everyone have ease of body, mind, and spirit. Continue to do that a few more times. And now finally, let's come back to ourselves one more time. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I have ease of body, mind, and spirit. And once again, do that for a few more times. Thank you. I didn't do the difficult person. I purposefully left them out this time. But it is a great practice if we can try to extend basic kindness even to a difficult person, and to remember that they just want to be happy, just like us. So that's what I have to say today. Thank you for your patience and listening to all this. And I can entertain questions if you have any, or any comments you'd like to share with others. How about you folks online?
Susan, can you hear me? This is James.
Oh, hi, James. Oh, yes, you're online. Your voice was so loud, I felt like you must be in the room.
I'm in a room. I was thinking about what you said about empathy early in the talk. I enjoyed this talk, and I enjoyed learning about neuropsychology, neurophysical stuff as it has to do with the emotions. And empathy, I'm a very feeling type of person, very, very sensitive person. I kind of lose myself when I feel others' emotions. And so I have a lot of anxiety, I think, when I have to kind of be an individual. One of the mantras I have, something I say to myself when I'm worried about whether I'm successful, I suppose, is everyone wants me to succeed. Whenever I have this inner critic barking at my door, I think I kind of project what other people are mirroring to me is that they want me to succeed.
Yeah, that's great.
And I think that's because we all have that inner critic barking at our door, and we need to see it in other people, that they can feel successful.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's very true, and it's a trick I use when I am preparing to give a talk for dealing with my own anxious feelings. I remember that same thing. These are all my friends. These are all my friends. They wish the best for me, and it helps me a lot when I shift out of, concern for performance and into, oh, I'm just going to talk to my friends about some things I'm interested in.
Susan? Oh,
Yeah, Kathleen.
sorry. Are you done? I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for your talk. It was really good. I appreciate it. Some comments that I wanted to make that came to my mind are the following. Our tripartite brain, meaning the medulla, the primitive part of the brain, and our brain stem, the midbrain, which is our center of emotion and processing sensation, and then our higher brain function, the high cortex. these parts of the brain are biologic realities. So I hear what you said regarding Freud, and that culture seems to focus on the human negative, dangerous aspects. But I will say that Freud wrote a book called Civilization and Its Discontents after he saw the horrific destruction of World War I. And he began to think about and wonder why and how humans could do such destructive acts. So the point I'm trying to get at is, I think it's important for us as human beings to not deny that there is deep-seated primitive drives in all of us. We should not ignore that, but that through these practices and through learning that we can attain higher social, kindness, and recognize that helps us to not be so driven by these primitive drives. And I'll just end with this. We're all vulnerable. So if we get a TBI, a traumatic brain injury, dementia, mental illness, substance use disorder, these things cut us off from those higher functioning levels, and we act in more primitive ways. We're more vulnerable. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. It's very true what you're saying. I read that the Dalai Lama said that when he went to visit Auschwitz, that, we are vulnerable, just as what you said, to some very unspeakable acts and thoughts, but we also have that other side of our being. But it's important, to understand that that's not just in those people that kill and, commit horrific crimes, that it's in all of us, that if we were in a certain context under stress, as you said, we're vulnerable. And we don't have access to those higher levels of reasoning and functioning. That's really good. And Kathleen is a psychologist, everybody. Thank you so much.
Susan?
Yeah, hi, Amy.
Hi. This is just brief, but one thing that I've watched recently is called Mission Joy. It's a conversation between the Dalai Lama and Reverend Bishop Tutu, Bishop Tutu, and their friendship, and really talking a lot about the themes that you're describing today. And if people haven't seen it, I would recommend it. It was wonderful to watch.
Also, it was in a video.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. It's called Mission Joy.
Okay, good. Everybody hear that? Wonderful. Thanks for that resource. How about anyone in the room? Want to share something? Hi.
You were talking about evolution earlier. I'm a strong believer in evolution. I don't believe that life on this planet started 6,000 years ago in a garden with two naked people. We've been around, I believe in science. Apparently this universe has been around for about 14 billion years. Our planet's been around for 4 billion years. And for 165 million years, dinosaurs ruled this planet. And apparently, the theory says that some asteroid hit this planet, threw up a big cloud of dust. Dinosaurs died out from, they were cold-blooded creatures, and all of a sudden these little mammals that were scurrying around, trying not to be dinosaur food, evolved over 65 million years, and here we are. And I wonder what would have happened, of course, this didn't happen, I wouldn't be sitting here wondering. But what if this asteroid had never hit this planet? 165 million years of dinosaurs. What would the life be like on this planet? Would that planet, without those dinosaurs, evolved into something smarter? You know, I always think that, you know, did God create man or did man create God? So we're sitting here today. What would life been like if this piece of rock didn't hit the planet 65 million years ago? This lake wouldn't have either one of its names. It would just be a lake, might be a big marsh here. So, I don't know, just something for, how did our brain develop to where we're at right now? That's, to me, that's the big mystery about life. You know, and that's the awesome part. It's beautiful, but it's just a mystery to me, so.
Yeah, that's, you know, we have this wonderful power of imagination to think about things in that huge scale. I think the point they're making here is that it was humans, including early humans, the vulnerability, the great vulnerability of human offspring is what sort of forced humans to cooperate in order to raise these children and get them to an age of viability where they could survive. And so that's one of the biggest points he's made, is that these emotions, these human emotions, have helped us to evolve to the point where we can care for our young and nurture our young, and the species, you know, it contributes to the survival of the species.
Thank you.
Thanks for that story and image, though, about the asteroid hitting and oh, hi.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you for bringing up meta as a practice. I know for me personally, I have this little note written for me on my altar at home that just says, do meta. And then when it gets brought up, I realize how much that can fall by the wayside sometimes, especially when we're sitting here facing the wall, kind of, you know, in and out of concentration, that sort of thing, kind of forgetting that this is also a compassion project that we're doing. I think for me, what's kind of difficult sometimes is feeling like, you know, can I really actually extend those feelings of loving kindness to the whole world? Sometimes that, within the grand scheme of things, that feels really difficult. And an instruction that's been helpful to me is when you talk about setting up in your mind those friendship connections, those family connections, and realizing that when you're deep in the meta practice, that there is that actual yearning for other people to feel free and happy and to be at ease, and just connecting with that over and over again. Just being able to actually build on that is so, and then it actually becomes an actual viable image in one's mind, I feel like. So just thank you for bringing up meta.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, it's a powerful practice. And just as he said, you know, it's something we can just do in an abbreviated form. Just choose 2 people we know and send it to them, if nothing else. But I think what's important is to really try to feel that, as you were saying. So it's not just a rote sort of theoretical thing that you're doing. Sort of, oh, I'm going to be good. I'm going to, you know, create some nice emotions. No, we really want to try to connect with our deep humanity and the humanity of others. Yeah. Thank you.
Susan?
Hi.
Hi. We're kind of building off that. I felt like the worst I feel is when I'm very like selfish and always looking for things to gain, like personally. That mindset eventually leads to me feeling bad. What doesn't then is being very selfless, right? Like Metta has said, caring. But then I find myself like, oh, maybe it's just like another way to take care of yourself. And I don't know if you have anything to comment on it, but it almost feels like just a few more steps to selfishness. You know, just caring for everyone else and then just so I can feel good again. Am I looking at this wrong? Or
No, I think that's a legitimate question. And as he said, giving can sometimes be more about the self, about what we receive when we do that. And Jim always uses this phrase, well, he used to, I don't think he does so much anymore, but he would talk about idiot compassion, like compassion with no boundaries, I think the important thing, we have to have boundaries, and we have to kind of accept the fact that we are self-referential. That's just part of our makeup. And so it's really just, all we have to do is see that and keep on going, and try to make that something that's not just theoretical, something that we're just doing within ourselves, in our mind, but allowing that to go deep, because when it does, then that changes our behavior. It changes how we show up in the world. But don't be ashamed of being self-centered or self-referential, because we're all like that. We're all like that. And we can do things to mitigate that and to genuinely, and then, we might start with just this idea that it's a good practice, but then it becomes something more than that for us, If we keep at it with some sincere effort, it becomes way more than that. Just a nice Buddhist practice. It transforms our life. And by transforming our life, we automatically we're showing up differently for others. We're showing up, I'll say, better, in a better place for others. Is that okay? Okay. Hi.
I could just add to the meta, and the question is a great question. When we look at that internal acceptance of self and the boundaries and making it part of who you are, my mantra is give what I don't have. And that's that personal set of boundaries, respecting other people, respecting those pieces, and that gives you even more boundless kindness.
Yeah, that you're respecting yourself. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have to respect ourselves, and boundaries are important. And what James was saying about sort of merging into people, I used to pick up on people's emotions a lot because my boundaries emotionally and psychically were too diffuse, so I made a concerted effort to create energetic boundaries so that I was not sort of leaking so much or emerging too much. And I found, I could hear somebody weeping in the corner of the zendo during a retreat and would suddenly find myself weeping too. And that's when I realized, maybe, maybe I should look into this a little bit here. Yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening.